Ann Louise Gittleman is my guest today. She is without a doubt a true visionary nutritionist. She's literally been on the forefront of health for over 30 years, and I feel really honored to be considered a friend of hers. Now, she's also a trendsetter, and she's got this new book out called Radical Metabolism, and she said to me that this book is going to rewrite the rules of nutrition, which she's done before, by the way. And honestly, this book is rewriting the rules for nutrition. It's pretty radical. And if you don't know who Ann Louise is, she's an award-winning author of 30 books already. She has a very, very famous book called The Fat Flush Plan. One of my favorite books is an all-time classic called Guess What Came to Dinner, and it's about parasites. If you've never read that book, you must read that book. I think parasites are more timely than ever today. But in this book, Radical Metabolism, she is going to surprise you with what she says. I'm not that surprised, really, that she wrote the book because there was a real need for it, because she's an expert on bile. And, nobody talks about bile, but it's something we really need to know about. But the book, she went on and she developed a whole entire program, a two-part program, actually, around improving your bile flow and metabolism. So if you've somebody that is very frustrated because you've tried to lose weight and you haven't been able to, or you have poor digestion of fats, which is a huge, huge number of people, or if you have hypothyroidism, or, you've been wondering, like, should I be on that ketogenic diet? I keep hearing so much about it, but is it good for me? Because I also hear fat isn't good for me. So we're going to talk with Ann today. Ann Louise today, and I'm really glad that she's got this book out already. It's ready to go. You can buy it right now. But Ann Louise, thank you very much for being on, and I'm very, very excited about this interview because this is a radical book.
Thank you, and thank you for the lovely, lovely introduction. You're an icon in my book.
Thank you. Well, first of all, you've already got all these books out there, and you didn't need to write another one. Why did you write this book?
Well, it's because I was getting really frustrated, Donna. I felt that individuals that were over 40 were individuals that were destined to have a sluggish metabolism forever. And I wanted to reveal many of the secrets I had been gleaning and collecting for the past 20 years so that individuals could lose weight, feel great, tone up their thyroid, get some sort of bile protection if they didn't have a gallbladder. And then I figured out that there was this unholy connection between the bile and the gallbladder, which nobody has been identifying. So we're bringing bile back into the forefront. We're going to make it as sexy and as brilliant as probiotics, because I think it's the next wave in diet and detox and feeling good.
I agree with that. And there's a ton of research on bile, but it's not out there for people to have. And I think, the way you've explained it in the book, and also how useful you've made the program that you put together, really is an answer. Like, it's not, hey, this is a book on bile and this is why. You're actually doing a how-to, and I think today people want how-to, which is, I think that's my favorite thing about the book. So what's different about this book, though, from the other books you've written and all the other nutrition books out there? Why is this book different? Why is it radical?
Well, it's radical to me because I put coffee back on the menu, and I've always been a non-coffee believer until I read the research to suggest that coffee had certain substances, primarily chlorogenic acid, which was its secret weapon in helping people lose weight. And with a high antioxidant chlorogenic rich coffee, you're able not just to lose weight, but you're able to protect your muscles from degenerating as we get older. So there's lots to be said about coffee, which is not only organic and should be mold-free, but it also is considered a primary bitter, which is so important for digestion. So coffee is back on the dinner table, and it forms the centerpiece of my morning drink, which is the Energy Blaster, which uses organic, mold-free, high chlorogenic, high antioxidant coffee as one of its primary ingredients.
So in the back of the book, just for everybody to know, there's a wonderful list of the foods that are on the program and brand names, like where to go to get this mold-free, potent coffee, basically. But I'm somebody that doesn't drink coffee because it makes me more high-strung. I'm already, like just with my genes and everything, I'm more, like I feel a lot of stress easily and I don't clear it easily. I've got those genes. And then when I look at my coffee gene, CYP1A2, I don't clear caffeine. So I know from the research that if you've got this common SNP, this common variant, you should have your coffee in the morning, not at bedtime. And coffee, by the way, are we talking about caffeine? Are we talking about chocolate too? Does chocolate?
No. What we're talking about is the polyphenols and the chlorogenic acid. And the good news is that this particular brand, Donna, that I found, because I couldn't tolerate coffee either, I have the same kind of SNPs that you do, but they're coming out with a caffeine-free coffee that has all the bitters, all the chlorogenic acid, the polyphenols that the regular caffeinated variety has. So you're still going to get the benefits without the caffeine.
Okay, so it's not the caffeine. It's all the special.
Not in the studies, no. It has really nothing to do with the caffeine. It has everything to do with the chlorogenic acid.
Very important point to get out. I'm getting more excited about this book all the time in the whole program. Now, the other thing that's pretty radical is your whole take on fats. Because, everybody's into omega-3 from fish oil, and omega fats are bad. And, of course, there's different quality, but usually when I think of omega-6, I think of GLA, borage, and evening primrose, which are good, and they help balance the omega-3. But you've got some really interesting omega-6 fats that you strongly, tell people to use. You're strongly into these. So let's talk about that for a little while, because that's radical.
Oh, it's very radical because I talk about membrane medicine, and we've got to heal the membrane at the level of the cell. That's really key. So the aspect here is the use of omega-6. Have you ever heard of omega-6 to repair cell membranes before?
Yeah, I have.
Well, you have.
I'm
but
one of those
people,
avid readers and studiers. So.
Well, your people are very sophisticated, and that's why I love doing all of my podcasts with you. But I can tell you this, most people think of omega-6 as being pro-inflammatory.
Definitely.
If it's the right omega-6, which is unaltered, unheated, not full of GMOs, and exposed to heat, air, and light, it's an actually very beneficial fatty acid that we used to call vitamin F. It was that essential. It's an essential fatty acid that studies have shown are the most efficient. We've got the omega-3s to the extent that they're overcoming the omega-6s, which you need for the cell membrane and for your skin to keep it tight, to keep it toned, and to keep it taut when you lose all that weight. So we're bringing back the good omega-6s primarily in the form of hemp seed oil. So I say hemp, hooray. Hemp seed oil is the most balanced essential fatty acid on the planet, and is so good for your skin, hair, and nails, and your weight loss efforts.
Okay, just to clarify something for people, a couple of things I want to say about that. First of all, I think it's important what you said, to repeat that the oils from, say, sunflower seed or hemp seed and so on, these seed oils, they've been bad for us partly or largely because of the quality that we have available. So they're bleached, deodorized, refined, basically poison, and that's what we've had available. And you're talking about a completely different quality of omega-6, still from sunflower, still from different types of omega-6 seeds like hemp. Now, is hemp okay? So here's another thing I'd kind of like to have you talk about, if you would. Somebody might say, well, I can't do nuts and seeds, but when you press the oil from the nut and seed, you're leaving behind the proteins and you're getting the oil. So do you think people react differently? I'd love for you to talk about that.
People react very well to the seed oils. They're considered the parent essential fatty acids. We don't find those allergic responses. So the very key that you said is that so many of the omega-6s that are in commercial use today, the corn oil, the soybean oil, the other sunflower oils, they've all been overheated. They've been oxidized. They contain cell membrane destroying oils that drive up inflammation and disease. We're talking about the anti-inflammatory omega-6s, which we desperately need, because if if you have your omegas tested, you'll find that you're very deficient in omega-6, linoleic acid. So this book will bring back linoleic acid so that you can have beautiful skin, hair, and nails, and you'll have the instigating factor for your brown fat, which is the new obesity cure that I also introduce and confirm in the book.
For years I've said to people, look really carefully if you're buying any foods, which I personally don't buy, but people need them. Chips, for example. If it says high oleic sunflower oil, it's very different from just sunflower oil, right?
And the same thing with safflower oil, which is what they've done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because
Can
if
you explain that? Do you mind explaining that?
Well, what they've done is that they've exposed this to a chemical process which makes the oil completely different. It's no longer an essential fat. It's an oil that is conducive to heating. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about eating enough of the raw omega-6s, which is important not just for your metabolism, but the health of the cell membranes. And it's very important to trigger the production of brown fat, which is important to burn calories for energy. So you've got so many values in the omega-6s that we're missing that if you don't have an oil like hemp seed oil, high in the good omega-6s, GLA to be exact, or you don't have pine nut oil, which really restores your digestive tract from your mouth to your anus, and that's in the literature, then you're missing out on a very important nutrient, and that's why we still have skin issues like eczema and psoriasis. We're deficient in the sexy sixes.
Well, I've been using Siberian Natural, I think it's called, pine nut seed oil for years, and recommending it to people if they had H. pylori. I have a little protocol for people with H. pylori, and that's an important part of it. And so when I read your book and saw that that was one of the oils that you love and were recommending, I was really excited because it's kind of one of those, like you said, a secret that no one knows about. So
but they're going to, I hope they know about it now. It's so important. You know what we found, that people that have GERD, or people that have irritated esophageal linings, or problems with H. pylori, or any kind of ulcerative or pre-ulcerative conditions, even leaky gut, this heals the gut at the cell membrane level because it contains an essential fatty acid similar to GLA, pinoleic acid, which will restore the integrity of the membrane in as little as 3 weeks, just taking a teaspoon 3 times a day. And it's remarkable. I have not found anything, Donna, that's as remarkable as Siberian Naturals pine nut oil.
Mm-hmm. It's delicious taste. I think it's delicious. And also you recommend macadamia nut oil, which is one of my favorites. I always have that on hand. Now, the oils, and I use olive oil and avocado oil too, but what's the difference? If you could explain to everybody, that you categorize them differently, the omega-6, pine seed oil, and pine nut oil, actually, and the hemp seed oil, and also how is that different from, say, olive oil and avocado oil?
Well, we're talking about essential fats that you can only get from foods because your body can't make those essential fats. So there are 2 basic essential fats. We're talking about the 3s and the 6s. Mm-hmm. You need a 4-to-1 ratio in favor of the 6 in favor of the 3. The other oils are healthy because they help with appetite, adiponectin, they help with leptin, but they're not as helpful in terms of restoring the cell membrane the way the 6s are and the 3s to some extent. So avocado oil is good because it's a cooking oil that you can use under high heat. And to some extent, that's very true of coconut oil, another saturated fat, and then macadamia nut oil, which is actually very stable under high heat. But they're not primary sources of the essential fatty acids that you need to repair the cell, the tissues, and the organs on a minute-by-minute cell basis.
And how much of the omega-6, the good ones that you're recommending, are you recommending a day?
I would say 2 to 3 tablespoons.
Wow, that's a lot.
But we're so deficient. You first need to restore your reserves, and then you get healthy again, and you can go back to 1 or 2 tablespoons.
Okay, so let's talk about digesting those oils, because I'm sure right now, and many people are thinking, I couldn't take that much oil. I would have trouble digesting it.
Well, that's where the bile comes into play. That's where my bitters come into play. You see, every little adjunct on the program works like a guided missile to help your body on a cellular level. So we've got lots of bitters to help your digestion, and bitters are so important in terms of being able to digest fats. Many people no longer have their gallbladder, and if you don't have your gallbladder, which times the release of bile, you need some sort of bitter substitute in the form of herbs or foods or lemon juice. You need something to assist in the breakdown of the fats into its essential particles. And that's what's so important in terms of triggering the thyroid to transform T4 into T3. So it all works together like a beautiful symphony when you get radically healthy.
Can you define a bitter or explain what's in a bitter? And they're very easy to obtain, by the way. They're easy to get in the health food store. And that's another one of those, products that people pass by, don't pay any attention to. But there's several companies that have excellent bitters out there for us. And by the way, once people used them all the time.
Well, I love bitters. I mean, bitters are better. I think that should be our new mantra, don't you think?
We're so good at coming up with these cute sayings.
We want one-liners so that people can really have these sound bites. But the importance of bitters and what you look for in bitters are certain herbs. Gentian is one of them. Angelica root is another. Bitters you'll find in lemon peels and orange peels, which are so helpful to restore the intestinal lining. You're finding them in different fruits. Believe it or not, grapefruit is a bitter, which may account for the reason it was so helpful years ago as a primary ingredient in the grapefruit diet that has now been studied because it's so efficacious based on clinical studies. So you find them, my gosh, all over the place. Remember Swedish bitters years back? Everybody used to take Swedish bitters. Now you see Dr. Shade's bitters number 9.
Is that the same thing?
I don't believe it's the same thing, but it's kind of the healthier version of bitters now that we're finding. And
it's a liposomal? Is his liposomal? I've had it before.
I don't know if it's liposomal, but it's very well tolerated with individuals that have leaky gut and very sensitive systems.
Mm-hmm. It's a little pump bottle, that pumps. So Dr. Chris Bates, we can give his name, and of course you give all these resources in the back of the book. Well, let's talk more about bile, because really people don't know anything about it. Like, where does it come from? Why do we have bile? What does it do?
Bile is a bitter. It's a bitter liquid that your liver actually produces maybe 1.5 quarts a day. And it's designed for 3 things. So the take home here is that it's designed to break down fats. It's designed to flush toxins. And bile is also very important in terms of assisting your gallbladder to transform the T4 into the active T3, which is a connection that most people don't understand. So it's a detox method. It breaks down fats. And if you don't have enough bile, you're not going to be able to tolerate all of the xenoestrogens in the environment, because it's also a method for breaking down hormones. And so it's exceedingly important in a day and age when toxins abound in the environment to the tune of 100,000 as of late. And it's also important for those of us that want to lose weight because of this unusual connection with the thyroid. I now call bile the new thyroid cure, to be exact, because of research which has shown that individuals with suboptimal bile flow are 7.5 more times likely to suffer from hypothyroidism. So there's a connection both ways between the thyroid, the bile, the gallbladder, or lack thereof, and your ability to lose weight and also enhance your metabolism on all levels.
I'll add to that list of why bile is important also is it stimulates peristaltic movement. I think a lot of people are constipated for different reasons, but one reason is they're just not making enough bile. And bile stimulates peristaltic movement, and then the food that we've eaten, which is digested now, moves down along the digestive tract and comes out of our body, which is really important. So I found that people, just by increasing their consumption of bile with a supplement, will start to have better bowel movements.
It's unbelievable. Bile is better than fiber in that regard because it lubricates the gut. And that's why I find it so important when people add bitter greens or other foods and supplements to their program. They can go to the bathroom better, they're eliminating, they're less hungry. It's one of the forgotten aids to weight loss, and it's also so important because of its ability to transform all of those toxic metabolites of estrogen out into the system. So it's important for women with all kinds of dysregulation of hormones. It's important to me for individuals that have systemic inflammation. It's just one of the forgotten detox methods that used to be talked about at the beginning of the 20th century, but we've moved on and unfortunately ignored such an important mechanism, which is innate in the body.
Well, they are available. You can actually purchase bile enzymes, right?
Bile salts you can purchase. You can purchase beetroot substances that thin the bile and help prevent gallstones. You can also buy choline, which is a major component of bile that helps to emulsify fats. Even taurine, which is a key component of bile acids, that very important amino acid. Lipase is important, collinsonia root. Lots of ways to thin and make your bile free-flowing. And it's really free-flowing bile that is so important, because if it congeals and gets congested, that's the beginning of gallstones. That's something we do not want. And I also suggest for people that have issues with their gallbladder and want to save their gallbladder that they probably should look at eliminating certain foods. We're finding a huge connection between food allergies and intolerances and the production of gallstones.
Well, what foods should they eliminate?
Well, interestingly enough, when the studies were done back in the 1960s, studies that I remember distantly, and you probably do too, they were done by an allergist. I think he was a pediatric allergist. And what was found is that the three top foods, number one, more so than any of the others, was eggs. So eggs was the top allergic producing food. Eggs, number one. Number two was pork, and number three was onions.
So onions, that's interesting. They're real rich in sulfur. Is there any connection between sulfur-rich foods like onions and garlic and bile?
Well, maybe that's the inability to go through any of the sulfur detox mechanisms, that was happening. What we're thinking what was going on is that there was actually inflammation in the bile ducts based on these three foods. And so more than any of the others combined, eggs was number one, but number two was pork, maybe the fatty aspect of pork, inability to digest it properly. Very interesting. This was done in the 60s, so we don't know a whole lot about it. But I can tell you very honestly, whenever I have individuals with a sluggish metabolism, those that have problems with pain in the thyroid, in the gallbladder rather, issues with wanting to keep their gallbladder because they have gallstones, if you take them off of these three foods, many of the aches and pains disappear within 5 days.
So the aches and pains disappear, but what about the gallstones once they're forming in the gallbladder? And I've talked to people. They've gone to the doctor. They've been diagnosed with a lot of stones, and the doctors, of course, the only answer is to remove the gallbladder. I've got a couple of questions there. Like, do you think there's a way to dissolve those gallstones, first of all? And secondly,
I do, and that's the next part of this. I very much do, and I talk about it, of course, in Radical Metabolism in terms of restoring your gallbladder. I'm a big believer in a particular supplement that you can get either through standard process or biotics, which is orthophosphoric acid. And it's very helpful in dissolving gallstones and kidney stones. So you follow the instructions on the bottle, and it's a liquid that this comes in. Very bitter, by the way, so it's a very bitter substance. But people have been able to dissolve and to disintegrate the gallstones so that they're no longer a real issue in the gallbladder.
Well, does Biotics make this just for this purpose, or they had made it for another purpose, and then you discovered that it was good for dissolving gallstones?
I'm sure that they don't make claims in terms of what this is used for, but we all know, those of us that are in the business, that this is what is used to dissolve gallstones and kidney stones. It's been around the product itself from Standard Process has been around for over 50 years.
So could you give the name to everybody again?
Yeah, I want to give you the names. I think it's called Phosphozyme under Biotics. It's available either through a Biotics distributor or online in Amazon, or the standard process phosphozyme, or phosphate is what it's called, orthophosphoric acid with phosphate. Extraordinarily helpful.
Now, I happen to be, for years have been, telling people about to be really mindful not to eat the high oxalate foods because they do form stones. So I've been digging into this research for quite a while now, and I was just doing an interview with someone on cardiovascular disease and started looking. I just got this idea to look up and see if there's much of a connection between oxalates and heart, cardiovascular problems. And there is, believe it or not. Oxalates actually cause a form of arteriosclerosis, like a hardening of the arteries and plaque in the arteries, which makes sense because, they travel through the body in the bloodstream and then they settle into places like the kidneys and causes, these stones. So this is a really useful bit of information because I think people have no idea that they're forming stones in their body and, they don't necessarily cause pain until finally it gets to the really acute stage, and then you go to a hospital and they just remove your kidney or your gallbladder or something. So, I guess, can you just say, what is your latest feeling on oxalates, or do you?
No, I think that they're very much an underappreciated issue with so many people. And there are many of us that are eating these elevated oxalate foods that are creating problems that we don't need because we're not in balance, whether that's too much spinach, too much kale, too much coconut. I think that we've got to be in better balance. And I think by taking this phosphoric acid on a regular basis, almost like a tonifier, then that's helping us tremendously and not overbuilding too much of a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to throw another little clinical pearl out there because you had mentioned beetroot being good. Beets are high in oxalates, if you take a food that's high in oxalates, like beets, which are fantastic for you, good for your heart, they increase your nitric oxide for circulation, but a lot of people have a problem with a variant in the NOS gene, so I love beets, but in my opinion, they need to be fermented. So, I've been teaching people for years how to make fermented vegetables, and you can ferment beets. If you ferment them, you get rid of the oxalates. And there's a company out there, Farmhouse Culture, which I think every health food store in the country carries. They have a gut shot that's beet and ginger. And so many times I've recommended their gut shot beet formula because it's fermented. So this would be a really good little other thing to be purchasing and having in your refrigerator, having along with your meals. I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I think that that's very important. So there are all different ways that you can utilize these bile thinning aspects, and you've just got to be really mindful of what else is going on in your body. But I think that oxalates is definitely an issue that has to come from under the radar.
Mm-hmm. And it is slowly but surely, but not fast enough.
Slowly but surely. It reminds me of the histamine issue. The two are very similar to me.
Mm-hmm. And that's starting to be on the forefront too. One of the fruits, as a matter of fact, so you've got some fruits that you recommend. Oh, well, first of all, you recommend juicing, and you prefer juicing over a smoothie, although smoothies are fine. Like to put veggies in the blender and blend them all up and make a smoothie is certainly perfectly good on your program. But you also love juices. So just to let everybody know, Ann Louise has a 4-day program to get you kind of started, like a jumpstart
Yes.
program. And then after that, you can move into a 21-day program. And so let's talk about the programs, and you talk about some of the foods on the programs. And I just wanted to throw in the kiwi, because kiwi, by the way, is a nice natural laxative. And it is on the list of foods people should avoid if it's high in histamine. But, we do have to personalize these foods too, which I know, of course, you're 100% in agreement with.
Oh, absolutely.
Could you talk about Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
We have a 4-day radical intensive cleanse, as you so nicely introduced, and I think that's important because it's the program which will detox your bile. We want to rebuild your bile later in the 21-day, but detox your bile. And in so doing, we also flush out toxins. We can reverse or at least control some food sensitivities. And then you just prime up your metabolic pump to reset your metabolism in a short period of time. So we give your whole digestive system a rest. We give you the juice and nothing but the juice. We don't want the fiber, which is why you may need a juicer, or at least strain this particular drinks that we make so that you don't have a lot of fiber. We want a lot of polyphenols, very important bioflavonoids, to really support your mitochondria and flip on your slimming switches, so to speak, during the 4-day program. Now, they're very interesting juices that we have developed, Donna, and a wonderful soup, watercress soup, which has a lot of good research behind it. But we've got an AM Rise and Shine juice and a PM High Five juice. And the Rise and Shine juice includes grapefruit and carrot and cucumber and a little bib of romaine lettuce. So it's a little lower in the oxalates as best I could. And we make some fresh mint leaves that we add to it, a little fresh ginger, turmeric if you're brave, and maybe my Radical Lemon Cube, which has a little bit of the lemon peel in it. So we've got a bitter drink first thing in the morning. Last thing in the evening, you've got a little jicama, you've got some cucumber, you've got a little apple, little celery. What you're going to notice is we mainly do vegetables, not a whole lot of fruits during this 4-day cleanse.
That's good because that has the sugar. And Louise, you know how anxiety is such a problem today? You can't turn around without picking up an article, a research study, people talking about anxiety. Of course, we're under a lot of stress, but what about our diet? What about the fats that we're eating and anxiety? Is there any relationship there?
I think there may be a relationship to anxiety and the lack of the omega-6s, which we're finding are very important for the nerves. So I'm going to bet my bottom dollar on getting more of those 6s into the diet. I think a little hemp seed oil, a little pine nut oil, a little raw unrefined safflower oil, that may do the trick. Very nourishing for the nerve endings. And I'm also finding that individuals that detox more successfully, which you can with bile because it's a binder to all the toxins, are not as anxious. So I'm seeing this happening with my own clients, with my beta testers. So I think just doing a little radical metabolism program or instituting some of the ideas that we have in the book may be just a lovely little answer to anxiety.
Well, I mean, that's important, I think, to stress, too, to everybody, is you don't have to do the 21-day. 4 days is easy to do. 21, it's not a hard program. I mean, you're still eating yummy things. It's just that in the 21-day, you're actually adding even more. And I think you'll want to do the 21-day, but you don't have to because you do give so much important information all throughout the book that anybody can implement.
Regardless of what program you're doing. And this is paleo friendly, it's keto friendly, it's raw food friendly, it's good for the vegans. So we have a little bit of everything for anybody, but it's specifically good for those with autoimmune disease because we clean up the detox mechanisms, and we also focus on really revving up the thyroid so that you're not as liable not to lose weight, and that your metabolism can be humming again. And I think that's important, especially if you've got any kind of Hashimoto's going on, or even Graves' disease, which is becoming so epidemic.
And even if you don't think you have a thyroid problem, because you might go to the doctor and they say, oh, you're fine, your TSH is fine, because that's all they tested.
That's all they
But
test.
even if they looked at all the other markers, T4, free T4, RT3, all of those, and the thing is that I think people have thyroid problems without knowing they have them, or they don't necessarily even show up in a test. It's just sluggish, and it also changes. Like today it could be okay, tomorrow it's really sluggish again. So this is really an important piece of information that you're sharing here.
Well, and I also think people have bile problems and don't realize it. It's not until you get great pain in your gallbladder or even pain in the liver that you feel something is going on. And so the reality is if you have light-colored stools, you've got a bile issue. If you're dizzy after meals, it could be a bile issue. Intermittent awakening at night could be bile. Problems with bloating after a fatty meal, it could be bile. Anything that you're experiencing along the gallbladder meridian could actually be a problem with sluggish bile or congested bile.
Great. Well, we don't want to tell everybody
Everything.
So, I do highly recommend this book. I don't care how educated you are in nutrition and you think you've read everything and you know everything there is to know, you are definitely going to learn some really exciting new stuff in this book and useful information that I think will make a big difference. So I'm going to highly recommend this book. And Louise, where can people purchase the book?
They can get it, Donna, at radicalmetabolism.com, where they'll get 3 free gifts when they order the book with 25 recipes, a pantry program where you can just restock your pantry to make it radically healthy. And then there's another free download, which is all about curbing your cravings. And then it'll put you into a special radical metabolism group. So if you've got any of these concerns, whether it's high oxalates or any of the issues that, Donna, you've mentioned, I'm there to tell you how to make your program more radically effective and more radically adaptable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what's important, I think, to say is that whatever you're doing out there, you can do it better if you've read this book.
I think so, and I'm glad you agree.
I know so. I do, spend all my time studying, research, constantly studying nutrition and genes and so on. And I know this book will make a difference in people's lives. So I'm hoping people hear me and pick up a copy. But I also wanted to say thank you very much for being on with us today. We'll have to do more of this. And I love some of the slogans that you've come up with, like bitters are better.
Sixes
are sexy. So let's go off and all of us, let's get 60 now and start adding some sixes to our diet, but the right kind of sixes.
I love it. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.